Evan, I've never seen you clean shaven. You look like a new man.
Well, thanks. I thought it was time for a change. I don't know how many of the people around in the project saw me at the beginning. I was clean shaven, and then I had a goatee, and then a full beard, and I just decided to chop it all off and start over again. We'll see what happens.
Well, perhaps this is indicative of a deeper sort of shift. No, not perhaps. It definitely is because what we're talking about today, Evan, among other things, is that your title has recently changed, meaning your role has recently changed within the Dash Core team. Tell us what you are called now.
We're calling my new role the senior advisor to the the sub-organizations within the Dash DAO. I mean, that's kind of long, but I think it's probably better to like step back and talk about a little bit of what was the intention. This was a long planned move since the very beginning, since me and Ryan first started talking about it. We had started talking about like how I would shift out and then start other sub organizations within the Dash ecosystem. Because what I really want to do is I wanted to build out the core part of the project, get a really strong team in place, and then move to the edges of the economy and start working on those and expanding that out. And so,
Okay.
as a strategy advisor, it allows me to move about the project in a completely different way and not be associated or just completely attached to any one of these individual projects that are going on.
Well, that makes you sound something like a butterfly, like a fluttering butterfly. So maybe let's hone in on this butterfly's path a bit. Do you have in mind the first flower you will stop at? Is there a flower on your radar?
There is a flower on the radar. So the first flower, I guess, that I'm going to land on is I'm thinking about calling it Dash Skunkworks. Brand new, huh?
I don't know what
um,
that word means. Okay.
okay, so Skunkworks in general means that you're doing experimental things. It's research and prototyping. It's future proofing. It's coming up with ideas. It's very forward seeking, right? Whereas the Dash core team is in the now. They're focused on what are we delivering right now, what are our core values, and how do we fulfill that for the current investor base. And that's hugely important, but we also need someone or a group of people that are looking at 5 years and 10 years and 15 years in the future and planning. And so
Skunkworks.
yeah, so I'm stepping aside. I'm going to find a new founder for this organization, and then me and this person are going to co-create this new organization within the Dash ecosystem to start to look into these sorts of things.
Hmm. Well, I can't say that that doesn't make sense. It does because you strike me as the guy who does best, sort of like hacking at the bushes, going forward into the unexplored territory, and then once a sort of path has been hacked, well then yes, then others are better at setting up camp in the cleared space. Am I using enough metaphors in this episode?
Yeah, they're really good metaphors, though. I'm liking it.
Well, thank you. Okay, so Skunkworks coming on the horizon with a founder whom we do not yet know, and I imagine that we will at some point.
Mhm.
Well, now, are there anything in particular that you would like to churn out of this Skunkworks first, such as like a particular topic or a particular piece of research or problem that you think ought to be solved first?
So over the last few months, I've been doing lots of research, and it's more about determining what are our current limitations. Where are we going to first start seeing hiccups? As we grow, we'll start hitting these thresholds where we can't grow past them because we're having like issues. For example, it's kind of interesting to think that the Dash core organization itself, its employees grow linearly, meaning that one employee can only really hire another one at a time. Like you can't hire 3 or 5 people every, few weeks for forever and expect any sort of quality to come out of that.
Okay.
But the Dash ecosystem grows exponentially, right? And so we have like this gap there. We need to grow our ability to do projects and our ability to employ people also exponentially. And this is, I think, going to be handled by these other sub-organizations that are starting to pop up within our ecosystem, which operate completely independently, right? And so by combining all of the forces that are currently working, then suddenly we do have exponential growth. That's just one thing, and then there's other things that are cropping up as well. Like, how do you determine which sub-organization does what? What if one sub-organization of the DAO wants to do this specific activity, but only really one can do it? So we need some sort of ratification system. Like we need to be able to vote as a network. This specific sub-organization is going to be responsible for these specific roles and duties, right? So it's like these types of things that I'm currently working on. And then hardware. After we have integrated into the Bitcoin ecosystem, what I'd like to do is start making hardware that's specifically designed for Dash. So has full support into the Dash ecosystem, like ATMs, POS devices, and special devices that allow you to spend money completely securely. And this type of stuff is better handled by, another group of people that aren't so tied to all of these current ongoing things. So I think it's going to be a good mixture.
I see. Interesting. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the now, where Dash currently is. How do you feel about where we currently are? Does it fall in line with where you thought we would be? Is it ahead? Is it behind? Or did you not even have a sort of prediction for in time?
Um, I didn't have, so I think it's ahead a little bit. I thought that we would hit exponential growth somewhere about here. And then um, from my opinion, I don't think that we'll easily fall out of it unless we make a mistake. And so for the current level of success, I would say we're doing wonderfully. And I think that the way that I see this, going is that we'll figure out new vectors and in different places that enhance the value that we're providing, and we'll actually be able to hopefully reliably produce that at scale. And that's really difficult as a decentralized project to do. But I think that from what I'm seeing in the teams, we're actually doing it. We have the most talented developers that I've ever worked with. And so from that perspective of all of the teams that I've worked on, we're doing a fantastic job hiring people. And we're attracting the best and brightest talent in the space. People that, have 20 plus years of experience looking into exactly the things that we're doing. And then we rely on those people to build out these products and then add the value that we're seeking to add to the ecosystem.
Okay. As a sort of addendum to that question, I would like to define what metrics do you look at when gauging how the network is doing? Like when you said you think we're a little ahead, but doing wonderfully. Is this a combination of, is this market cap? Is this human talent who is on board? Is this adoption within, merchants in the crypto sphere? Like what metric or metrics do you look at?
I'm mostly talking about like the people that I socialize with in Phoenix, and there's many newfound people that are interested in the project and investors that have absolutely no experience in the crypto sphere, right? So these are the people that I thought would be brought on by evolution, but as it turned out, they wanted to invest in masternodes and run them on Trezors, and they want to participate in the voting and all of this sort of thing. And so we're ahead on that front. Um, as far as like the metrics that I'm watching, it's mostly the transactions that we're doing on the network. Uh, we're actually growing.
You mean like transactions per block?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We're growing faster than I thought as well. Like I didn't envision that we would see a huge uptake in transactional volume until Evolution launched.
Okay.
Um, but it appears as though the issues with the other blockchains like Bitcoin and unconfirmed transactions are actually causing people to bleed over into our market, and it's starting to be used. So um, there's growth in areas that I didn't even predict that's becoming quite useful to growing the ecosystem as a whole.
I see. Is there anything that you haven't brought up already that you think that you see like a certain goalpost into the future? Like, yes, we must definitely do that at some point, or we must definitely do that at some point.
Many things. So I'm going to be very active in the near future in the community and trying to push through some initiatives. And I'll just name a few of them to start. I'd like to do some sort of auditing for the sub organizations. As the sub organizations start taking money from the network, they start out really small, right? But then they grow. There's a point at which they grow to that they should have some transparent record keeping that's kept to some sort of level on the network. Like we need to determine what level of what level of record keeping do we want to keep, because we don't want to be wasting money and we need to know where it's being spent, right? So the way that I would want to solve that, or I would suggest to the network, is how about we elect an auditor, and this person would go from organization to organization and look in the books and then make recommendations to these sub organizations on how to flesh out better record keeping for us. And so as we grow, then we should be better at spending money.
It seems like, I mean, with like you mentioned, like elect an auditor, books, spending money, these kinds of things. It's starting to feel, and has been for a while, in my opinion, like the Dash network is becoming like a cyber city or
Hmm.
something, like a cyber city state. Uh, and I mean, like Andreas Antonopoulos has mentioned, the the coming cyber states, perhaps like ushered in by blockchains. But I mean, like, so going back to the cyber city thing, um, I mean, do you feel like a city planner? Like I I get the sense that you are a planner of of a cyber city. I mean, is that what it feels like to you, or does this strike you as totally weird?
I think I like that terminology better than what I'm thinking of it as, and
Oh,
because I think of these as governments.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
for example, Bitcoin is more like an anarchist government. So we're trying different governance systems, and then some of them turn into these completely functional city-like things where you do need planners, you need a city council, you need boards of elected representatives for the citizens, right? The citizens of Dash Nation or
Right,
whatever you want to
right,
call it.
right.
Um, and so it does actually feel like that, and I could just I could see it turning into that for sure.
And now here's a bit of future gazing that I would like. But okay, so like we've seen how governments work in meat space, right? Like there's sorts of, like pretend geographic lines basically, and so like governance on the face of planet Earth happens, within like lines on the dirt. And so I guess in that land is scarce, the number of governments which can or do coexist is limited to the amount of dirt and who is able to stake and claim what amount for themselves. How do you see that playing out in the cyberspace, where I suppose the only scarcity is number of humans participating? I mean, do you think we'll have more governments in cyberspace? Do you think we'll have fewer? Or will they all just sort of be connected, like together but not together? I mean, how do you see this playing out?
Uh, let me talk about kind of like what I see in the best possible outcome.
Okay.
I I would love it if a person that lived in a country with, a government could have dual citizenship with an entity like Dash, which means that we can have competing governments or governance systems, and they're competing for the citizens' money essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like we could have tax money going through these institutions, and then completely transparently um, recording and spending and allocating and doing all of the things that the public sector does, but you know, with the digital twist, with all of the things we like about this space.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're not limiting governments to land. Governments have always been landlocked. They control the land, and then anyone within their land is a citizen, right? Whereas in the future, we could see these borders just disappear, and then many options appear out of nowhere, where the governments become less important, and then these other institutions become much more important in deciding how monies are spent and allocated and distributed and all of that.
Can you give me a sort of vision or picture of, I guess, Dash's adoption or reach, something like 5 years into the future, and then like 15 years into the future? Like, what do we look like? What are we doing?
Okay, so let's start with 3 years.
Let's start with
In,
3 years.
in 3 years, I see evolution being out, us having well over 1 million users worldwide, and then masternode shares being operational, which presses up the amount of locked coins to somewhere between like 80 and 90%. It pushes up our market cap, allowing us to have a lot larger of a budget. And then the sky is the limit of what we can accomplish. So then 5 to 10 years, we're talking about having pretty much been integrated into the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. What do you do after that? Well, what about kiosks, POS systems, ATMs that are, exactly made for what we're offering? The the thing that I've been tooling around with myself over the last 2 weeks is, could you run a bank out of a kiosk? So a virtual bank, let's say that it doesn't even have ATMs, and you scan a driver's license at the kiosk, which gives you an Evolution account, and then you can put Dash into your account through that process, or you can withdraw. Also, these kiosks are at stores. So let's say there's 10,000 of them, worldwide. Now you have 10,000 places where you can go sign up for an account, put money in Dash, withdraw money out of Dash, and spend money like it was a credit card at the location. And so what ends up happening is that you'll have users going to one of these locations, getting groceries, and saying, "I'd like $50 back." So it's cash back, right? Now you have $50 of anonymous cash that you can spend before you hit the next kiosk. and suddenly it starts acting like a bank. Like you can access your money as often as you want, you can pull it out, and you can spend it anonymously. And then with these kiosks, you always have complete access into the ecosystem.
And so when you say cash back, you mean like paper money back. So
Yeah,
like you're paying with Dash that is tied to your driver's license, but you can ask to receive back paper in exchange.
precisely. So let's say you go in there, you sign up, you buy some groceries, and then you say I'd like $50 cash back, just like you do in the US from your debit card.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that $50, now you can spend it anywhere in the local area.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really need the bank account anymore.
And now
You
tell me the function of the driver's license. What's that for?
so we need to sign up the user. We're going to have to do some sort of KYC to make this work, right? Theoretically, anyway. And to do that, I'm thinking, well, you would use a driver's license, vet the person's identity through, a third party organization that is closely associated with Dash. But this doesn't mean evolution requires any of this. This is just for this kiosk
Just for the
system, right?
kiosk. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it. A bank in a box.
a bank in a box. Yeah. Back to your earlier question, another thing that I think I'd like to push through the network is we have an issue of masternode operator bandwidth. If you think about it, we have a lot of proposals on the network. The proposals get more complicated over time because what happens is we start spending more money on each proposal, and the complexity of them just goes up. Well, the masternode operators themselves don't really have they have a fixed amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they're also investors and they have families, and these are busy people. And so the solution to that would be, why don't we make a board that is a review committee for proposals elected by the network, by the master nodes on behalf of the master nodes to review all of the proposals and then flag them, whether they support or to avoid a specific proposal.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't mean that it would force the master nodes to do anything,
Right.
but the ones that wanted to free up some time and automate the process a little bit could use that, and then we would reduce waste again. I think a lot of what I want to accomplish in the near future is figuring out how we're wasting money and then cutting that in so that we can efficiently move on to the next phase.
Okay. Well, I think that covers everything that I wanted to ask you today, Evan, but I have to say, I would like to get one final comment from you before I let you go. It just popped into my head, this question, which is, what is your driving motivation in all of this?
Um, so I definitely want to create a world in which there is less corruption. And I think the banking industry, the governments in general, the corporations, the for-profit nature of the world, all of those are in conflict with, what reduces corruption. And so by making an alternative and figuring out ways of working around those issues and just providing an example of how to do it without corruption, we can start to replicate that over and over again. If it's not even us doing it, we pave the way, and then others imitate, which is wonderful. And then the world's a lot better off after.
And now, let me dig define corruption for me. And what would a corrupted blockchain network look like versus a non-corrupted blockchain network?
Um, okay, so corruption comes in many various forms, but what I'm referring to is just the general problems that we've seen with the banking industry. Like, for example, the 2008 collapse was caused pretty much purely by corruption. There was a lot of like insider stuff going on, a lot of people just trying to make a buck and not really caring about what came out of that. And I think by aligning incentives, you can avoid a lot of that. And by building systems which are robust enough to kind of work their way around, people that are corrupt themselves, they put up a greater fight. And so the digital cryptographic revolution is one of, transparency, and transparency in general fights corruption alone. And so by using these principles over and over again, and building out these structures, I hope to influence the world in a positive way.
Very interesting. Well, Mr. Evan Duffield, thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking to you when your Skunk Works launches.
All right. Thank you so much.